I was sorting through another stack of papers in the cramped, musty office of the government property agency, feeling like I was drowning in legal jargon and endless forms. My dad had left me his shares in a big-shot company, and here I was, trying to make sense of what that meant for me, a 27-year-old who'd rather be anywhere but here. The clerk on the other side of the desk was a guy named Alex, a young man with a tired look that seemed to say he'd seen too many people like me. He shuffled through my paperwork, his eyes not quite meeting mine. "So, Melissa, you're the lucky one inheriting a fortune, huh?" His voice was flat, but I detected a hint of something else. Was it curiosity? Lucky? Feels more like I've inherited a headache. I tried to smile, but it felt forced. I have no clue about half of these documents. Alex looked up, a genuine smile cracking his weary demeanor. "Yeah, it's a mess, isn't it? But don't worry, I'll walk you through it. We'll get it sorted." As we went through the documents, his patience was surprising. Most clerks just wanted you out the door, but Alex took his time explaining each form, what it meant, and what I needed to do. It was refreshing. "Thanks, Alex. I didn't expect to find someone who actually cares in a place like this," I said, once we were done. He shrugged, the corners of his mouth turning up slightly. "We're not all robots yet. Besides, it's a nice break from the usual. Helping someone's a good feeling, you know?" I laughed, the sound brighter than anything I'd felt since stepping into this bureaucratic maze. "I guess I owe you one then. Coffee? My treat, as a thank you for not letting me drown in paperwork." "Coffee sounds great, but it's my treat." "You've got enough on your plate with all this inheritance stuff," Alex countered, standing up and gathering the now neatly stacked documents. Walking out of the office felt different. The burden of paperwork was still there, but lighter somehow. Alex led the way to a nearby cafe, a small, cozy place that felt worlds away from the sterile government office. As we sat down with our coffee, the conversation flowed easily. We talked about everything and nothing, work, hobbies, how life can throw curveballs when you least expect it. "You know, I never thought I'd meet someone like you in a place like that." "Someone real," I found myself saying. Alex raised an eyebrow, a smirk playing on his lips. "Someone real? What, you thought I was a government-issued robot designed to make your life miserable?" I chuckled, shaking my head. "No, it's just, everyone seems so caught up in their own stuff. It's rare to find someone who listens, who actually sees you, you know?" He nodded, taking a sip of his coffee. "I get it. Life's too short to be anything but real, especially with people. We're all just trying to figure it out, one day at a time." Our story didn't start with love at first sight or grand gestures. It started with shared smiles, genuine kindness, and a cup of coffee. And sometimes, that's all it takes to turn a regular day into the beginning of the rest of your life. After that day at the cafe, things between me and Alex took off faster than I could have imagined. It wasn't long before we were seeing each other outside of all that legal and paperwork mess. One evening, sitting on my old, comfy couch with takeout boxes scattered around, Alex brought up the idea that would change everything. "Hey, I've been thinking," he started, a bit hesitant, which wasn't like him at all. He was always so full of confidence, his ideas bold and out there. "With your inheritance and my knowledge of the market, we could start something on our own. Something big." I paused, a piece of pizza halfway to my mouth. "Start something? Like what, a business?" The idea seemed crazy. Sure, I had money now, but business was a whole different game. "Yeah, a business. Hear me out." He leaned forward, his eyes lighting up the way they always did when he was excited about something. "We both know the agricultural sector is booming. What if we dive into that? Start a wholesale warehouse for spare parts or something. It's in demand, and with your capital and my connections, we could really make a mark." I set my pizza down, intrigued despite myself. "But I don't know the first thing about running a business, Alex." "And what about your job?" He waved his hand dismissively. "My job's a dead end, you know that. And you're smart, you'll learn. We'll learn together. His confidence was infectious, but I was still hesitant. Alex, it's a huge risk. What if it doesn't work out? I could lose everything. The fear of making a monumental mistake was gnawing at me. But what if it does work out? His hand found mine across the couch, giving it a reassuring squeeze. You won't be alone in this. We're in it together, every step of the way. Plus, your mom's been bugging you about investing that money wisely, right? Here's our chance to do something wise and big. I couldn't help but laugh. You've got an answer for everything, don't you? His enthusiasm was hard to resist. Okay, let's say we do this. We're going to need a solid plan. And I mean solid, Alex. No winging it. Of course. He was practically bouncing with excitement now. I'll draft something up. We'll go over it together, tweak it, make sure it's foolproof. And just like that, our joint venture began. It was a whirlwind of planning, meetings with lawyers, to draw up a partnership agreement, and endless research. My head was spinning most days, but seeing Alex so passionate and dedicated was all the reassurance I needed. Before we got married, Alex insisted we sign a prenuptial agreement. It's just practical, he said one night as we were going over some business plans. In case things go south, we both know where we stand. Everything split in half, clean and simple. I nodded, understanding his point, but wanting to add my own condition. All right, I get it. But I want something in there too. If one of us cheats and that leads to divorce, the cheater loses their share in the business. He looked at me, surprised, but then nodded. Fair enough. I love you, and I'm not going to cheat on you. So, yeah, let's add it. It was a tough conversation, but it felt right. Setting clear rules felt like we were laying a strong foundation, not just for our business, but for our relationship too. The day we signed the lease for our warehouse space was surreal. Standing there, looking at the empty building that would soon be bustling with our business, I felt a mix of terror and exhilaration. We're really doing this, aren't we? I said, more to myself than to Alex. He came up behind me, wrapping his arms around my waist. We're doing this. And it's going to be amazing. You and me, we're going to build something great here. I leaned back into his embrace, allowing myself to believe in the dream we were building. It wasn't just about the business, it was about us, taking on the world together. Little did I know, the challenges ahead would test us in ways I never expected. But in that moment, all I felt was hope and the thrill of starting something new with the man I loved. The buzz of our warehouse was like music to my ears, the shelves stacked with parts, orders coming in and going out. Alex and I, we were riding the high of our success. Our little venture into the world of agricultural spare parts was booming, profits climbing higher than either of us had dared to dream. It was a rush, seeing something we built from the ground up flourish like this. But with growth came growing pains. We need more hands on deck, I said one evening, poring over orders and invoices that seemed to multiply by the hour. I can't keep up with the paperwork on top of everything else. Alex, ever the cautious one, frowned at the suggestion. I don't know, babe. Hiring more people means trusting outsiders with our baby. Can't have just anyone poking around our finances and legal stuff. I got where he was coming from, but something had to give. So, what, you want me to do it all? I'm already swamped as it is. He looked at me, a mix of apology and determination in his eyes. I was thinking, maybe you could take some courses? Get certified in accounting and legal management? It'd keep things tight, just between us. The thought of going back to school on top of running a business felt overwhelming, to say the least. Seriously? When am I supposed to find the time for that? At night? Weekends? He suggested, as if it were that simple. Look, I know it's a lot, but we've got to protect what we've built. You're brilliant, babe. You'll ace it in no time. So, that's what I did. By day, I was the co-owner of a thriving business, and by night, a student once again. It was exhausting, juggling books with balance sheets, but I was determined to keep our dream alive. As the business expanded, so did my responsibilities. I became the backbone of our operations paperwork maze, handling everything from document management to accounting and legal issues. Alex took charge of the finances, contract negotiations, and steering the company's growth, which meant he was on the road a lot, leaving me to hold down the fort. One night, with Alex away on a trip and me buried under a mountain of work, I couldn't help but feel the weight of it all. "This isn't what I signed up for," I muttered to myself, staring at the computer screen long after the office had gone dark. The phone rang, breaking the silence. It was Alex, checking in from wherever his meetings had taken him. "Hey, how's my superstar manager doing?" I sighed, rubbing my tired eyes. "Drowning in paperwork, if you must know." "This is insane, Alex. I can barely keep my head above water." There was a pause on the line. "I'm sorry, babe. I wish I could be here to help. But you're killing it, you know that? I couldn't do this without you." His words were meant to comfort, but they felt like a reminder of the chasm between us, growing wider with every business trip he took. I miss you, Alex. And I miss us not being so consumed by all of this." "I know, I miss you too. But think about where this is going to take us. We're building our future, one invoice at a time," he tried to joke. I forced a laugh, but it sounded hollow even to my own ears. "Yeah, one invoice at a time. Just make sure you come back to me in one piece, okay?" "I promise. And hey, when I get back, let's take a day off. Just you and me, no business talk. Deal?" "Deal," I agreed, clinging to that small promise of normalcy in the midst of our success-driven chaos. Hanging up, I turned back to my work, the screen blurring slightly as I blinked back tears. This was the dream, wasn't it? So why did it feel like something was slipping through my fingers? Life in the fast lane of our booming business took its toll on me in more ways than one. The late nights, the constant stress, and the never-ending pile of work left little time for anything else, especially taking care of myself. I didn't even notice the changes at first, but as the months rolled by, the mirror reflected a version of me I hardly recognized. I was heavier, more worn out, and the sparkle that once lit up my eyes seemed to have dimmed. It wasn't just my reflection that had changed, Alex's behavior towards me had shifted too. He started working longer hours, making excuses to stay at the office or go on trips without me. "Just tying up some loose ends," he'd say, or, "This trip is really important for the business." I tried to brush off the nagging feeling that something was off, telling myself it was all in my head. Then came the party with his business partners. I was actually looking forward to it, a chance to step away from the work and maybe even reconnect with Alex amidst our hectic schedules. But when I mentioned it, his reaction caught me off guard. "Look, I don't think it's a good idea for you to come," he said, not meeting my eye. I was stunned. "What? Why not? I thought we were both invited." He sighed, a look of discomfort crossing his face. "It's just, the wives of the partners, they're all, very polished. And you've changed. I don't want you to feel out of place. It might be better if I go alone." His words hit me like a slap in the face. Changed? Out of place? Since when did appearances matter more to him than us being together? "So, what, you're ashamed of me now?" The hurt was evident in my voice, mixing with a rising anger. "It's not like that," he said quickly, "but the damage was done. I'm just thinking about what's best for the business. That's all." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. This wasn't the Alex I fell in love with, the one who used to tell me I was beautiful no matter what. Now, here he was, embarrassed by me, by the very real signs of the life and work we had shared. "If that's how you see me, then go. Enjoy your party," I spat out, the words tasting bitter. He tried to say something else, probably to backtrack or smooth things over, but I was done listening. I turned away, feeling a mix of heartbreak and disgust. That night, as he went off to mingle and laugh with our polished associates, I stayed home, crying over the unspoken cracks in our marriage that had finally, painfully, come to light. The tension in our house grew thicker with each passing day, turning from a place of love and shared dreams into a battlefield. The party incident had left a gaping wound in our relationship, and things only went downhill from there. Alex, the man who once looked at me like I was the only woman in the world, started finding fault in everything I did, especially about my looks. One evening, as I was trying to unwind after another grueling day at work, he walked in, his face set in that now familiar look of disapproval. "Here," he said, tossing a brochure onto the coffee table. It was a membership for a local fitness club. "Thought you could use this. Might help with, you know." He gestured vaguely at me. I stared at the brochure, then up at him, feeling a mix of anger and hurt. "What's that supposed to mean?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "It means maybe it's time to do something about how you look. You're not exactly the woman I married anymore." He shot back, his words like daggers. I tried to shrug off his cruel comment, to show him that his words didn't hurt me, but they did. Deeply. "Alex, you know how swamped I am with work. When am I supposed to find the time to go to a gym?" "That's just an excuse," he retorted, his patience thinning. "If you cared enough, you'd make the time. But no, you'd rather just sit around and what? Do the job that keeps our business running? The job you're too busy to help with, because you're always out networking?" I couldn't keep the bitterness from my voice. He scoffed, turning away. "You know, I'm getting tired of your attitude. It's not just about the work. You've let yourself go, and it's embarrassing." I was speechless, the hurt turning into a deep-seated anger. How could he say such things? How could the man I loved, the man I built a life with, be so callous? But it didn't stop there. His comments became more frequent, more hurtful. He called me lazy, fat, a shadow of the woman he'd married. Each word chipped away at my self-esteem, at my very sense of self. I began to avoid mirrors, to shy away from his touch, feeling unworthy and unlovable. And then, there were the nights he didn't come home. The first time it happened, I was worried sick. By the third time, I was numb. When I dared to ask where he'd been, he'd snap. "It's none of your business. Just focus on what you're supposed to do." In the depth of my turmoil, I reached a point where the weight of silence became unbearable. My voice, shaky but determined, finally broke the silence one evening. "I can't live like this anymore," I admitted to Alex, my heart pounding against my chest. "We need to talk about divorce, about how we're going to handle the business." The idea of splitting everything we built together was daunting, but necessary for my peace. Alex's reaction was a mix of rage and disbelief. "You want to walk away now?" he thundered. "After all I've put into this? You think you're entitled to half?" His words, sharp and cutting, were meant to intimidate, to make me second-guess my worth. "I built this company. You're nothing without me," he sneered, his words echoing off the walls, a painful reminder of how far we'd drifted apart. His threats of dragging me through a legal nightmare didn't deter me as he thought they would. Instead, they crystallized my resolve. "It's not just about the business, Alex," I countered, my voice steadier than I felt. "It's about respect, something that's been missing for far too long." Later, washing my face with cold water of the bathroom, I stumbled upon Alex's phone, abandoned and buzzing with a new message. Driven by a sudden impulse, I picked it up, and what I found shattered the remnants of my denial. Messages from another woman, filled with intimacy and vulgarity, painted a vivid picture of betrayal. My heart sank as I scrolled through plans for a getaway, a trip meant for two, all behind my back. With every message I read, a part of the old me died, and a new resolve took its place. I didn't confront Alex with my discovery. Instead, I carefully documented everything, a silent promise to myself to fight for what was rightfully mine. This wasn't just about getting even, it was about claiming my dignity, my independence. With a heart heavy yet resolute, I knew what I had to do. The discovery of Alex's betrayal wasn't just a personal blow, it was a wake-up call to protect what I had worked so tirelessly for. So, I went to our office, a place that once symbolized our shared dreams, now a battlefield where I had to secure my future. First, I meticulously reviewed every document, every account associated with our business. It was crucial to understand the full scope of what we had built together, and what was at stake. Discovering the extent of Alex's deceit, including the car he bought for his mistress, only fueled my determination. I gathered every piece of evidence, made copies, and prepared myself for the next step. Armed with the documents, I sought out the best lawyer I could find, someone known for their integrity and tenacity. "I need to file for divorce," I told the lawyer, my voice steady but my hands betraying my nervousness. "And I intend to fight for what's rightfully mine in the business we built together." The lawyer, a seasoned professional with a keen sense of justice, listened intently as I laid out my case. After reviewing the prenuptial agreement and the evidence of infidelity, he looked at me with a reassuring calmness. "Given the circumstances and the evidence you've provided, you have a strong case. We'll do everything in our power to ensure you come out of this with what you deserve." The legal battle that ensued wasn't easy. It was a test of my resilience, my patience, and my very spirit. But throughout it all, I held on to the belief that truth and justice would prevail. And prevail they did. The court recognized the validity of our prenuptial agreement and the evidence of Alex's betrayal. In the end, the judgment was passed in my favor. I retained full ownership of the business we had built together, along with a fair portion of our shared assets. Additionally, I was granted financial compensation for the emotional distress caused by Alex's actions. It was a bittersweet victory. The business that had once been a symbol of our union and collective effort was now solely mine. The relief of securing my financial and professional future was tempered by the sadness of how our relationship had unraveled. Yet, as I stood outside the courthouse, the final decree in hand, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. The fight was over. I had stood up for myself, fought for what was right, and emerged victorious. It wasn't just about the business or the assets. It was about reclaiming my dignity and self-worth. A month had flown by since the court's decision. I was in the middle of reviewing some new contracts when my phone rang. The caller ID flashed Alex's name, a name I hadn't seen or thought about in weeks. Hesitating for just a moment, curiosity got the better of me, and I answered. "Hey, Melissa, it's me." Alex's voice came through, laced with a kind of forced cheerfulness. "I've been thinking about us, about everything that happened. I'm really sorry, you know? I messed up big time. I messed up big time." I couldn't help but let out a short, incredulous laugh. "You're sorry? Now? After everything?" "Yeah, I know it's late, but, listen, I'm in a bit of a tough spot right now," he continued, his voice taking on a desperate edge. "The thing with, it didn't work out. And I'm struggling to find a job. I was hoping, maybe you could help me out? Give me a job at the company?" His audacity left me speechless for a moment. The man who had betrayed me, who had threatened to take everything from me, was now asking for a favor. It was almost laughable. "Alex, let me get this straight," I said, my voice calm but firm. "You cheat, you lie, you try to drag me through the mud, and now you want me to give you a job? You've got some nerve." I know, it sounds bad, but I'm really in a bind here," he pleaded. "I'll take anything, really. I just need a chance to get back on my feet." I took a deep breath, feeling a sense of clarity and resolve wash over me. "Alex, the answer is no. I've moved on. The company is doing great, better than ever, actually. And that's without you. I suggest you do the same, move on." There was silence on the other end of the line for a few moments. "So, that's it, then? You're just going to leave me hanging? Goodbye, Alex." I ended the call and, without a second thought, blocked his number. It was a symbolic gesture, but an important one. I was closing that chapter of my life for good. In the weeks and months that followed, I poured my energy into the company. Sales were up, we were breaking into new markets, and I had signed several lucrative contracts with new partners. The business was thriving, and so was I. Looking back, I realized that Alex's betrayal, while devastating, had been a catalyst for change. It forced me to reevaluate my life, my values, and my ambitions. I emerged from that tumultuous period not as a victim, but as a victor, fully in control of my destiny.
All right, everyone's presentations are done. Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me and began to speak. There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. I'm leaving. After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick? Is something wrong? Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my second year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. Take care. That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked, we could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. I will do my best. Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. Did you not hear what I said? I'm sorry. I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, I'm thirsty. Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children. With zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job. Having joined the company wanting to do customer service. I don't care what they say, I plan to quit anytime, he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look. To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day. Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. So, you all get a chance. As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them. It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. All right, everyone's presentations are done. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me. There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. Still here? Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. I'm leaving. I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick! What's wrong? Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. Probably Sam. Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. President of the company, Mr. Mason himself, had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. Do you know how much revenue we get from that company? We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs, gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized. Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason. What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do. I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you. Please. Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, yes. That's Nick for you. Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, I'm very sorry. Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, get his boss here immediately. It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. What is that idiot doing? All right, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next. Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you. I obediently followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was, as the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize. Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. What kind of training are you giving your subordinates? Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed. I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their inn. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1: if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? I'm very sorry. Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong. Mike, what have you done? Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. I didn't do anything wrong. You're still saying that? Look at him. Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract? Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go. Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him. There's no way he was pushed aside. Don't make things worse here. He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he? I don't remember that part. I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you've failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it. Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, I'm moving to the sales department soon. If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it. On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. It's still working hours. Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived. I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. They look good. What are you talking about? These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one? As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself, this could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay? I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. Yes, I'm inviting my father. That's great. I might invite my parents too. I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hoped to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.